Phil was on a ship in Philadelphia. He was about to get off and go get a cheesesteak. Time for some lunch. Just as he started to get off, boom! The ship disappeared. Will Phil ever get his cheesesteak? Well, stay tuned. You're listening to Our Different Take, episode 27. Hello there, and welcome to Our Different Take. My name is Brian, proud father of two awesome boys, Jedi podcaster. This is the way. And to my left is Matt. Oh, welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Brian. I'm very excited to be a part of this one tonight, going over the Philadelphia experiment. Some interesting things to talk about. I know as a kid I was fascinated by the Philadelphia experiment, so I'm sure many of you were too. And weighing in on this from the great state of Texas, to my left is Scott. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Matt. I too am excited about this as I cut my teeth on stuff like this. Used to talk with some conspiracy-minded folks when as early as elementary school who told me about the Philadelphia experiment and many other things that Nikola Tesla was involved in. And so this it's an interesting thing. I'm interested to hear Matt take the lead tonight and tell us what he has found.
Okay, this episode we're going to be talking about the Philadelphia experiment. Matt is going to be our leader on this topic. It should be pretty interesting. So take it away, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So tonight, the Philadelphia experiment. My first exposure to the Philadelphia experiment was a movie in, I think, 1984. It came out. I don't know if you guys saw it. I thought every boy saw that movie. I thought it was awesome. I got it on VHS and I watched it many times at my house during sleepovers and stuff like that. I thought it was pretty cool, and it always fascinated me.
I've not seen it, but apparently it was remade in 2012 as well.
I did not see that. I just saw the original Hollywood version, which was, as a child, it was super interesting and a little bit terrifying, to be honest. And I was always interested in the Philadelphia experiment. I'm a little disappointed with what I found, to be honest. I was hoping to find more real dark conspiracies in this one, and I didn't really find what I was looking for, but I do have a lot of interesting information. The Philadelphia experiment, allegedly conducted in October of 1943, the USS Eldridge, which is a destroyer escort, I believe, and it was the whole ship was wired up, and what they were trying to do, allegedly, was to make it invisible to radar, is my understanding. And they electrified, in the movie, they electrified the ship and it disappears and shows up in New York. But everything that I can find on this one says that the real tale of the Philadelphia experiment as we know it sort of came out in the mid 50s. And it came out, it coincided with the release of a couple of sci-fi books, which kind of takes away from its credibility a little bit. There were several people that said they were witness to the Philadelphia experiment, and there are, I guess, some vets that have passed away now. I saw on the History Channel many years ago interviews with some guys that said they were part of the Philadelphia experiment. The crazy thing about the stories about it are that the ship was reported to have disappeared from radar and then literally disappeared. I don't think that's beyond, like, Tesla was pretty awesome. Making a whole ship disappear, that'd be pretty incredible. The other part of it is when it reappeared, it was many, many, many miles away. And reportedly, some of the sailors were fused into the bulkheads. In other words, everything didn't stay the way it was. The integrity of the ship was reported to have been compromised in some way, and where people like rematerialized halfway between decks and had the steel decking going through their bodies, and some of them through bulkheads and things like that, which is really creepy, don't
Yes.
you think?
Yes,
Uh,
that is terrifying.
right. But here's the thing that gets me, and I've seen videos on YouTube of people making steel blocks melt and move and dance with sound waves and electromagnetic current. You can totally take a ice cold block of steel and make it change its shape using electromagnetic fields and sound waves. Maybe, I mean, there may be something to it. The other thing is, um, there was letters that were sent to the Department of the Navy. There was a book that appeared in 1955, a UFO. Where's the name of that book? I just had it. The Case for the UFO. A copy of that book was sent to the Department of the Navy with a bunch of annotations and side notes written through the whole book. And it appears to have been written by three different people, and they're not identified in the book, but these three people supposedly, according to the notes, were witness to the Philadelphia experiment, and they talk about different things in the book as it relates to the Philadelphia experiment. A lot of research was done, and a lot of investigation, and nothing really came of that. It was thought to be maybe a publicity stunt or a hoax. It would be hard to take a ship a couple hundred miles away and do all the things that they did and not have anybody on that ship talk about it. That
Mm-hmm.
ship was crewed when they did that. There were, many sailors on board. You would think if you saw something that crazy, you'd have more than one person come forward.
Right.
I had heard, now I have no documentation for this, so full disclosure with that, but from the individual who told me about this initially, he had indicated that many of the men who were part of that experiment had actually gone crazy from it, which would make sense. It would make sense if you underwent something like that, and the things that reportedly happened actually did happen. Like if you were on a ship disappeared, you ended up 200 miles away, and when you ended up back where you were, you saw some of your crewmates uh, with their torso fused into a metal beam. Would that not mess with your mind?
I mean, it probably would, but some of these guys saw pretty serious combat in the Pacific. Some of those guys been around a long time, and it might mess with your mind, or the experiment itself might just like drive people mad. That I mean, it might rearrange your brain. Who knows?
I was just gonna say maybe that did happen. With the thing we talked about a few weeks ago, where in Kennedy's administration, the guy basically was trying to rat out the bad guys, and so they throw him in an insane asylum.
Right?
And they said, "Yeah, nobody's going to listen to you here. You're just crazy like everybody else." And so maybe that's how you keep a bunch of people quiet, is you either threaten them with, "Hey, you saw what happened to Frank over here. You want it to happen to you and your family? Then talk."
Well,
Or, you throw them in an insane asylum, and then if they do talk, who listens?
nobody. It's interesting that the story's been told and retold over and over again. It got real legs in 1979. Charles Berlitz wrote a book. He had written a book about the Bermuda Triangle, and then he published the book, The Philadelphia Experiment, Project Invisibility. which was supposed to be a factual account of everything that happened. Hard to corroborate those things. But there's been many times authors have retold this story. You know, the other thing that strikes me is, and it doesn't seem to be without any merit at all, if you had a bunch of people on board a ship and something like that happened, I would think that most of those guys would probably end up with really cushy jobs working for the military. And you know, hey man, we're gonna re-up your top secret clearance, and we're gonna put you on some cool projects, and we're gonna pay you a fat salary, and you're gonna sign this non-disclosure and keep your mouth shut, and we'll let you know when we're done with you, kind of a thing. And I think a lot of people go that route. In fact, I know personally several people that have gone that route. Um, so so there's that. And then every once in a while you get somebody that kind of goes off the ranch, and maybe they do end up in an insane asylum or disappeared.
Hmm.
I think it's a lot easier to just, I mean, like, you know, Stalin's no dummy, no man, no problem, right? And they would just disappear them, and and maybe accidents happen, and maybe the brakes go out on your car or whatever, you know.
Right.
So, you know, it's not beyond, I don't think it's beyond our government to do something like that. And I certainly don't think it's technologically beyond our government. I think they have a lot more tricks up their sleeve than they will ever let on, or that we'll know, you know, until it's
Right.
20 or 30-year-old technology. And I you know, it goes along with, I've always said, I think a lot of the things we see that are people think are space aliens are, in my opinion, dimensional beings that travel from different dimensions into this one. And I think it might be possible that they had started to open that door, and really, once they did that experiment trying to become radar invisible, and maybe they realized what they had, and they decided to scale it down, put it someplace dark, and work on it in private instead of
Hmm.
out on the open seas with 100 sailors.
I'm
Anyway,
definitely intrigued by the Philadelphia experiment because Tesla.
yeah,
And he had ostensibly, just like a year or two before this happened, before it supposedly happened, he had come up with I think unified field theory, is that what it's called?
that's right. That's exactly what it's called.
And
Albert Einstein coined that.
he basically said, yeah, I can make it happen. I can make a ship disappear. And again, according to the rumored story that I heard, which I have no corroborating evidence for, is that he said, but there can be no people on board. Do not try to do this with people on board. And because the vibrational frequencies of the metal, very different than the vibrational frequencies of human.
Hmm.
And he said, if you try this, it will be disastrous. And then Tesla met with an early death, and then the government seized his records, and somebody ostensibly who had knowledge of Tesla and his work came in and said, but I can do it. I can do it. And this is where the disaster occurred, because he said, yeah, I believe that it can happen, and it could happen, but then they didn't do what Tesla said to avoid, and that was met with disaster. Now, again, no corroborating evidence on any of this other than just you know, reports from reports, and but it makes sense.
It, it doesn't surprise me. I wouldn't be surprised at all to find out that that had actually happened. And as we all know, like Tesla, man, he is a next level genius. You know,
Right.
his grasp of things was far beyond nearly everyone, except maybe Albert Einstein. So
Well, and Tesla thought Einstein was an idiot.
yeah, there's a different version of the story that proposes the researchers were preparing magnetic and gravitational measurements of the seafloor to detect anomalies, supposedly based on Einstein's attempts to understand gravity. In that version, there's also secret experiments in Nazi Germany to find anti-gravity. There's a bunch of different things that interrelate with the whole tale of the Philadelphia experiment. But but it all kind of falls back on really on Tesla's unified field theory, and how you can manipulate and change like metal through frequency and vibration and magnetic fields. Super interesting stuff. There's a guy on YouTube that claims that he can make steel levitate through frequency and vibration, and that he can create anti-gravity fields. And he's been investigated a lot. A lot of people say he's a hoax. I would think if that was true, the government would be all over him and want to talk to him, unless they've already done it 20 years ago, and he's maybe not on quite the right path,
Or
uh,
70 years ago.
or 70 years ago. I mean, you got to think if they actually did that 70 plus years ago, what are they doing now?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And why do we need a space force? There's so many things that tie into this. Like, I think dimensionally, we opened gates long, long ago that we can come and go through. But
David Copperfield does this every day. It's like second nature to him.
he's not that cool, dude. I don't think, anyway.
Hey, I was on stage with that guy. It was pretty awesome.
With Copperfield? Oh, that's right, you were,
Mhm.
huh?
Yeah.
And we saw, what was that guy we saw in Vegas?
Angel, Chris Angel.
Chris Angel. I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was good too.
Yeah. Not
Yeah,
bad.
the TV show was kind of stupid.
You know. So
Was that Charlie's Angels or Chris Angels?
Now, Charlie's Angels may have been a stupid TV show, but it was pretty hot to watch. You got to give him that.
It's true.
What
Yeah.
kid
Like
in
the original one?
what kid in the 70s didn't just drool all over Farrah Fawcett and Jacqueline Smith?
I had a poster
Mhm.
of Farrah Fawcett, actually.
Oh, I was totally
true.
on Jacqueline. I mean, she was gorgeous.
Yeah.
She ain't
So-
gorgeous no more.
Well, okay,
You know,
everybody's got their time.
that's right. It's true.
But Tesla, ostensibly back in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, would do these little traveling road shows, trying to show people that he was smart and that he was worthy of being invested in. And he would play with electricity and frequencies. One of the things that he reportedly would do was he would turn his oscillating machines on and carry like a piece of rebar in his hand. And while he was holding it just in his hand, steady, the oscillating machine was set to whatever the resonant frequency of iron was. And slowly, after about 2 minutes, the piece of rebar would start to kind of wobble and vibrate until it got almost like it was a piece of rope, and then it would snap in two and fall to the ground. And so this was like in front of hundreds of people. He did this. This was witnessed by a lot of people. And he had this oscillator machine, and he'd put it in his apartment, in his New York apartment, and set it to various frequencies and just make notes of what happened when it was at certain frequencies. And so, he would watch, at certain frequency, the chair might start bouncing around the room. At another frequency, the toaster might start bouncing around and whatever. So he was just kind of like, yeah, okay, this is kind of interesting. And he would take notes and what have you. Well, one time he had it on, and I guess in his New York apartment, how in the older apartments they'd have these the support beams that would kind of go through the middle of your room or whatever. They don't much do that with architecture now because it's invasive. But back then, you would see these support beams maybe right in the middle of your living room. And apparently, he had his machine right up next to one of the support beams that went down directly into the earth. And while he was experimenting with these resonant frequencies, apparently he caused an earthquake that was felt 7 blocks away. And they were trying to figure out what this was because it wasn't a normal earthquake. And somebody was like, "It's that damn Tesla." And so they sent the cops after him, and he finally realized that what was causing this earthquake was him. And so he's like, "Oh my God, what do I do? What do I do?" And he took a sledgehammer and destroyed his oscillating machine right before the cops got there and knocked on the door. And he's like, "Oh yeah, sorry guys, good to see you. And you've just missed my experiment today, but come on back tomorrow and I'll have another one for you. Have a nice day." And so if a guy can do something like that, and he claims um, that he can make a ship disappear, uh, yeah,
Maybe he can.
maybe he
And
can.
and what's interesting to me is, you think about all the things that tie into that. Well, if back then they could come up with a resonant frequency to make something gigantic like that disappear, what could you do if you had the knowledge and some supercomputers and you could calculate the resonant frequency for anything? A duck, a boat, a person, whatever. You could send them wherever you wanted to send them. So it goes both ways. Like there, I mean, you could postulate on it and really daydream about it, and there's all kinds of amazing things that you could think of, but it's hard to find anybody that'll corroborate it. The There was a reunion of Navy vets who sailed aboard the Eldridge in '99, April of 1999. They all claimed that the ship had never made port in Philadelphia the whole time they were on it, and a lot of these guys were serving at that time. Further evidence shows that the log of the USS Eldridge put them far, far away from Philadelphia on the date in question, or anywhere near the date in question. And it's all available on microfilm. Now that's easy enough to fake, of course.
Right.
But you get all those old guys together talking. You would think somebody might be like, "Hey man, I might have been there." But all of them say they weren't. Now that doesn't mean that the Navy's not capable of putting a different name on a different ship and doing experiments with it. And sure they are, but the real USS Eldridge, those guys say that they weren't there.
Huh.
So fair enough. The Navy claims that they were doing a lot of experiments back then in 1943, and they were trying to map the seafloor, which actually it sounds like absolute bullshit uh, from the Navy. To they were doing something with powerful magnets and trying to degauss the magnets. Which I think you guys ever heard of degaussing a TV screen?
No.
Back in the day, like old TV tubes would get magnetized. As a kid, my dad about kicked my ass because I put a big magnet up to the TV screen, and it made a big black mark on the TV screen. It wouldn't go away, and the only way to fix it was to degauss it. And you take a big coil, a magnetic coil, and you pass it over the front of the TV several times, and it kind of scatters the magnetic field on the TV, and it brings the picture back.
Hmm.
And they claimed that they were trying to degauss a giant coil they were using on a ship, and trying to make a ship radar invisible wasn't part of their plan. They were looking for undersea mines and things like that, which also you can use electromagnetic fields for detecting mines and torpedoes and bombs in the water and things like that. And that's what they claimed they were doing.
Huh.
The story itself was always so interesting to me as a kid. And of course, Hollywood, there's beautiful women in that movie and tons of action and really cool stuff. And as a kid, I always believed it. Like I always just believed that was a real thing.
Sure.
And maybe it was really. None of Tesla's notes were ever found, were they? It all went away, didn't it?
Well, no, they found some of them, and so I think that a lot of them sit in. There's a Tesla museum over in where was he from? Czechoslovakia. Where was he from?
I don't know.
I can't remember right now. Some Eastern European country, and they have his notes, but
Interesting.
not all of them.
Right. Now,
Not
I
all
heard
of
the
them.
government came in as soon as he died
Yes.
and gutted his office and took everything they could find.
They used some really weird, never used before authorization to do it. Something like some agency that really didn't have the authority to do what they were doing did it. And then they
What's that
said,
sound like?
yeah, they
Huh.
said that they took all of the paperwork and they just put it in a bunch of barrels and left it in the basement, and nothing ever happened with it. But of course, baloney. A
I,
guy that
I
that
guarantee
had
you people were pouring over that.
yeah, you got to know it. The guy had what? How many? 115 patents, something like that. Crazy amount of patents, and you're not going to have that amount of knowledge and the kind of claims that he made, and then have everybody just kind of like, yeah, whatever, we don't care. Yeah, well, let's take all of the documents, but we're not even going to look at them. Nothing to see here.
Right, right,
Mhm.
right. One of the greatest minds of the time. I would want those notes.
Right.
And probably, to be honest with you, they were probably smart to get those notes before other governments got those notes, if there was something amazing in there, and there probably was.
It's
One
from
other
Croatia,
thing
by the
that I thought was
Croatia.
interesting.
Thank you.
Oh, is
yeah,
that where he's from? Croatia.
yeah.
Got it. Another thing that I thought was interesting about the whole experiment. So the ship supposedly disappeared. It traveled 200 miles away. It sat for some time in view of people aboard the SS Andrew Furseth, I think is how they Furseth is how they pronounced it. And then it vanished again, and then reappeared in Philadelphia, where it came from. I haven't heard anything about those sailors. I haven't heard about any interviews or anything like that. And also, they say that the ship lost 10 minutes, like it traveled backwards in time 10 minutes,
Hmm.
which is kind of interesting too. I don't know how you would know that, except that I'm sure they had instruments on board, and maybe if you were wearing a wristwatch or something. I wonder whatever happened to that ship, and
Hmm.
if you could go back and find DNA fused into the deck of that ship. It's probably a marine reef by now, but it would be interesting to see, wouldn't it? And maybe
It would.
I don't know how you get rid of that except to cut big holes out of the ship, you know.
Right. Melt
Uh,
it down.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
Yeah. Can you imagine the task of getting that task if you were assigned to it to clean it up?
who would do that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Ugh.
bad man.
Ugh. Yeah. It's just ugh. Can't even think about that.
Mm-mm.
It's a bad deal.
Horrible.
I think the smell would get me. Just saying. But anyway, I think it opens up a lot of interesting conversations. I think there's tons of evidence to the contrary, but there's always that chance. And when it comes to government projects, anything that the government does that maybe has some fruit that could be used for defense or for wartime, and they're all over it, dude. They'll take great pains to hide and reproduce those experiments and try and get whatever they can. Because if we don't do it, somebody else will. I guess is the thinking, and I don't know if that's a good way to think or not, but but I think it's interesting.
I mean, that's not the first time Americans have thought that because, well, I mean, we already talked about how we recruited the Nazis for our own space program
Right.
to
Yeah.
keep other countries from doing it.
Yep.
So if we drop down to that level, you know, this is not quite to that level of bringing Nazis in
Right.
where they can retire in peace from working in the U.S.
Well, I'm kind of torn about that. I think tough times make strange bedfellows, and if you gotta get ahead in the space race, and national security is at stake. We did end up at the top of the pile, and my life's probably a lot more comfortable because of it. So I don't really have any regrets for those decisions that were made. Personally, I feel like it bettered the country, and it was what we needed to do for national defense and for the space program has influenced so much of our military, so much of our economy. Like that space race was gigantic for us. There's so many things that have come out that have gone our way because of what we've done with NASA and things like that, and with the military, for that matter. We kind of call the shots, and we're the most powerful kid on the block still, which does make it nice for us. But how you get there, I guess, you have to kind of weigh it out, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's important. It's because if you don't weigh it out, then all of a sudden it's kind of the end justifies the means in all cases.
Not all, only some,
Yeah,
and I
but
don't know who gets to decide that. It's
right,
really tough, man.
exactly. Who gets to decide that? So
Yeah,
we're seeing that right now play out in the censorship debates. Right,
yeah,
some things are worthy of censorship and others are not. Well, where's the line, and who gets to decide? And
it's tough.
if you don't like the decision, who gets to appeal it? So now
Hmm.
you've because you've crossed the line and given them the power to do it once. Now they're almost expected. You've set a precedent. They're almost expected to do it, and now somebody makes that decision.
Right.
And so yeah, you start jacking with ethics because you feel like there's a good reason to do it, and next thing I mean, oh well, and now we've set a precedent, and now we got to do it here and there, and
Well, I think what was that, Operation Paperclip? Is that correct?
yeah,
Paperclip, yeah.
Hmm.
yes,
I
Correct.
think in Operation Paperclip there was some decent justification in that the Russians were picking up as many scientists as they could, and if we didn't take them, they would. And I think that really tipped the scales for a lot of people, because if the Russians got them, there was a serious race coming, and it might have been them and not us, you know.
I just have a hard time justifying that where those guys retire in the US while they killed thousands and thousands of people in
Well,
horrible ways.
well, not all of those guys were death camp Nazis. You know, a lot of them were coerced into the party, because of what they knew. And even what was it? I was reading Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen, I think was the book, about the lives of those three scientists. And at the time, a lot of them were coerced into the party just because, man, that's where they were at the time. That's where they lived over in Europe. And you're either part of the party or you can go to a camp and die, or, or worse. They just took the job that was handed to them and tried to do it. I don't know that any of them were actually high enough in the echelons to make a call on whether somebody lived or died in a death camp, or how many or any of them had a hand in any of that. So many people that were part of the Nazi Party did not have a hand in that.
According to a documentary I saw, though, on National Geographic, I mean, there wasn't a ton of them, but there was quite a few
yeah.
Of
that
of
still
the
had a big
scientists,
hand in killing a lot of the Jews.
There,
yeah,
there were a few that were fairly notorious killers.
Yeah.
Certainly not all of them.
right, yeah, tough call. And which ones at the time? Like, how do you know? Like, I guess you just make the best call you can. But I'm sure it would have been better if we'd have sent all the vicious killers over to Russia. Those guys all got what they deserved, for sure.
Hmm.
Not a great place to live during the Cold War.
No.
But I don't know. I mean, we brought over a ton of them. I don't know how many of them were actually Nazi war criminals. And really, it's interesting to me that if we brought those guys over, I'm surprised the Israelis didn't come knocking for those guys at some point. If they were notorious death camp guys, didn't the Jewish state hunt those guys relentlessly for years?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Killed quite a few of them.
Yeah, and rightly so. They would just show up
Yep.
and kill them.
Yep.
I think
Absolutely.
that's nothing wrong with that, man. The world's a better place.
Yep.
But
Agreed.
anyway, therein is the tale of the Philadelphia experiment. I was a little disappointed. I was hoping there was a lot more corroborating evidence on this one.
Yeah,
I
this
would
one seems a
say
little weak.
it does seem a little weak to me, although really cool. I don't doubt that the experiments took place. I kind of am doubting the time travel and the giant ship moving 200 miles. Why 200 miles? Really weird.
There was a ship that was docked alongside the Eldridge, at least in 1943, called the Ingstrom. I think that's how you say it, USS Ingstrom. There was a veteran who served on board of that, and he said that he suggested that the boat might have traveled from Philly to Norfolk in a single day by a way, the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal, where merchant ships couldn't use that, only naval vessels. That channel was kept quiet. He said German submarines had really just tore that place apart along the East Coast in this operation called Operation Drumbeat. And military ships couldn't protect themselves, so they decided to use these canals to move secretly from Philly to Norfolk. So he was saying it's possible that a ship could have taken this channel that no one knew about up and back in the time that they think that the ship disappeared and reappeared there. Take that for what you want, but that's one explanation
Well,
that
that's pretty interesting.
it could have happened.
Well, something happened, but I don't know that it was time travel, unfortunately. Maybe. Who can say?
Yeah, too bad.
Yes, yes. That does it for me.
Too bad. So sad.
Oh, dear.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Scott?
I think all of this stuff is interesting. The whole thing about most conspiracies is that there's, by definition, not a lot of corroborating evidence. So, it makes it harder to believe if there's not, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. And, things can be falsified. I certainly believe that. There's lots of secrets, and I think that the top secret stuff that we have would blow anybody's mind. I just believe that, and I don't know anybody who doesn't believe that that the government has top secret stuff.
Yep.
Everybody, I think, pretty much believes that. They just don't know what it is. So, how long have we had it, and how well have they kept it secret? Where is it? All of that stuff. We don't know. So it's interesting to talk about stuff like this. If there's people that said it, I certainly think that they deserve to be heard. Whether or not they're believed may be a different story, but I definitely think people deserve to be heard, and certainly don't buy the explanation that just because somebody's in an insane asylum that they're actually insane. Maybe they are. Maybe they're making stuff up in their heads, but I wouldn't be so quick to pass that judgment on some of these interesting stories.
Fair enough.
Humans, people, everything are too easy to manipulate what the truth is.
True.
It's way too easy. That's my note for the night right there. Write it down.
All right, I just
Make
wrote
a
it
plaque
down.
out of it. Okay.
Way too easy.
That's all I've got.
This is the
If you
way
want to
too
take it out,
easy.
I'll take it
I
out.
know.
Thanks for listening this week. We are now heard in over 28 countries. We can't say how thankful we are, and we love all of our listeners. Please call our voicemail line at 970-343-4594 to submit questions or comments, and you might just hear your voice on the air. Go to ourdifferenttake.com and our Facebook page group called ODT Nation. Follow us on Instagram at Our Different Take, as things are really taking off, and a lot of interesting topics that you won't see anywhere else are going to be on our channel on Instagram. Please send us your comments, suggestions, complaints, or questions to show@ourdifferenttake.com. We are over 200 strong, and our goal is to get to 400 by March. Don't forget, subscribe on Apple Podcasts and look for us wherever you get your podcasts from. We also have a YouTube channel called Our Different Take. Please subscribe and click on the bell so that you'll be alerted when a new podcast is released.
Very good. Peace.
Peace out.
Have a great one. I had tacos tonight, taco casa.
Taco Casa.
House of Tacos, I think is what that is.
Guys, time out. I got to step away from Mike just real fast.
As Brian receives his package from the FedEx man and he sends him on his way, urging him to drive safely, we take a breathe, a little moment of solitude.
Sorry, that was dinner being delivered.
And now he returns. And I appreciated your drive safe admonition.